with that, let me ask you this.
I don't know why the music didn't go. That was weird.
I bet it went for them.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, so it's kind of a general discussion, right? Because I thought that I had a third one. I'm sure that I do, and I'll find it, when we're done doing the show. But within the last couple of days, Oregon announced that they're going to recriminalize drugs, right? In the last midterms that they had, I don't know if you knew this, but Oregon decriminalized all drugs.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to go into like why they're doing it because I don't know, and that isn't really what I care about. I want to I want to get your guys' take on like the decriminalization of drugs. There's a whole bunch of different ideas about like, should we legalize all drugs? Should we decriminalize all drugs? Should we handle this type of thing? So that's all. It's just kind of what your guys' general ideas about that is. I don't know if you had heard about this Oregon thing or not. Or
No, I've heard about it. I guess I don't fully understand the entirety of the decriminalization of the drugs itself. Is it hard drugs? Is it just...
It was all drugs, just that you aren't going to go to jail for them anymore. That like you can still get a ticket for them, I think, and can't do it in public and stuff like that. But we're not going to take you to jail for being in possession of personal use amounts of drugs. And I'm sure they set thresholds for all of those things. A couple of grams.
If you're still like pushing weight around, then obviously there's something else going on.
If you have a scale and bags and shit, they're going to hit you with intent to distribute. But so that's my understanding of it. And that's why the discussion is more just generalized, not about Oregon in particular, because then there's also like the legalization of all drugs, which is that you won't get any tickets, you won't get anything. It's just free game, anything goes, and that's less common. I'm sure that there's a country or two that has that type of thing, but the decriminalization thing is pretty common.
I think it's fucking Portugal or something like that.
Yes.
That we're just no more. We're done with it. You guys just do whatever you want to do. It's an interesting concept. I'm down on it, especially because of the freedom and liberty aspect. You have the right to do with your body that you want. I don't like the decriminalization aspect of things because it's like, well, how did you get it? Still, did you just make this small amount of coke that you're carrying around with you? There's this weird gray area stuff. But I do like the fact we're not throwing people in fucking cages for the rest of their life for holding on to some small amount of any kind of drug. Really, I don't even really care what it is. I mean, you do what you're gonna do, man. But I like the concept. I would prefer more of just like a full legalization aspect, I think, just because I'm more comfortable with letting people do what they want to do and not be threatened to be thrown in a cage for the rest of your life. But there's definitely a lot of drawbacks. And I think, I want to say it's Portugal that did that, but if I'm wrong, we're just going to use that for the sake of the conversation.
Asterisk.
Yes, thank you. But whenever they did do that, there was a massive spike in crime. There was a massive spike in like overdose deaths and this, that, and the other thing.
And I believe that's what I believe that's what they ran into in Oregon is like the overdose didn't go up. They just didn't go down. They stayed stagnant, which is the opposite of what they were hoping for.
Yeah.
But crime, I believe, did go up, and that's part of what their issue is. Like, this isn't working the way that we had hoped that it would.
Yeah. And I think the thing was, like with Portugal, is you have to let it ride for a while. There's going to be a period of probably at least, I don't know, 5 to 10 years where people are going to go wild and start doing stupid shit and put themselves in a position where they shouldn't be, and then people are going to accidentally die or whatever, and then it kind of falls off, and the novelty of being able to do whatever kind of drug just kind of wears off, and then people like just might be more apt to not do it because, it's the same thing with like underage drinking and shit like that. I mean, after like when I was over in Europe, everybody that's 16 or over been drinking for a while, and the novelty wears off within a year, and then you just don't binge drink all the time like we do out here.
Right.
And so it just kind of wears off, and it becomes part of like the standard culture, and then everybody's drinking consumption generally falls. So I would assume that if you stick with it long enough, like the drug use probably will fall over time to like some kind of lower plateau and just maintain there. I can't imagine it would get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and then just keep going up.
Right.
People generally don't like to die early all the time by just going out. I'm going to go out and start shooting up heroin just because. Just because I can now. It's no, you're doing it for other reasons.
Rare.
I mean, that's all. If whatever situation is going to get you to start like shooting up heroin, your life's probably pretty shitty and to be put in that situation, and so you're probably gonna make those same choices whether or not it's illegal or legal to do.
Yeah.
But like regular recreational use, just to like fuck around and see what's going on, I would assume that would drop over time. Once people start seeing their friends that get hooked on something, they're like, I'm not fucking around with that, dude. That's
you think
dumb.
it's potentially like the addiction behind it and like how easy accessible it is compared to like alcohol? Because alcohol, right, even if you're like 16 or even say once you're 18 or 21, you can just go to the you can get a hand of it. Yeah, you can get it if you really want it. But as far as like the drugs are, whether they're man-made or if they're made from a manufacturer of some sort, you think that's like the reason why I guess they're probably reverting back, just because it's kind of harder to get. And they probably thought the crime would go down, but at the same time, it's not as easy to obtain, so therefore people are going to loot or do whatever they have to do in order to get it.
I would certainly think that's definitely has to be a factor. I don't know if that would be like the limiting factor, but I think too, it's particularly with like Oregon in specific or just anywhere in America, crime, there's a lot of things that go into like why crime is going up and down. And over the last few years in particular, I think there's so many other factors that will lead to higher crime rates and stuff like that. So I don't know if it would be specifically easier access to the drugs or not, but I could imagine it would certainly be a factor in it for sure. But I think I don't think you're going to fix anything by going back to criminalize them again. I don't think that would necessarily make the situation better.
Yeah.
Even if, particularly within, most major cities like that, there's so many like arrests that just get turned around, charges get dropped, and people go back out anyways.
Yeah.
And so like that might show the spike in crime, but then there might be those people will probably be back out on the streets with maybe a hand slap at best, just depending on their circumstance and stuff. So it's hard to gauge because of where we're already at in society here compared to anywhere else. And so, yeah, I don't know if the alcohol really, I don't know if that would really be a good comparison in my mind because it's so much more readily available and legal to get your hands on. And, even if, you got an older brother or an older cousin or something like that, he'll you throw him $5 on top of whatever the beer's going to cost, and he'll go out and get it and bring it back for you. That's a totally different thing than like having to find like a dealer that or a friend of yours that knows a dealer or something like that, and then it's just a totally different transaction and totally different process. So I don't know, never really thought about the two of them together, to be honest.
How you feel about it?
Yeah.
The biggest drawback that I see with decriminalization and legalization is that it doesn't address the other causes that are making people use drugs. Like that doesn't defeat the purpose. It may address some of the market for it, maybe. If there isn't as much, like just that there won't the demand. Sorry, the payoff may not be as high. I didn't take any off. The payoff may not be as high because the risk is not as high because it's not illegal anymore. So the overall money that's involved could go down, but it doesn't. People are still going to be dealing drugs, or still going to be making drugs. Like all that shit still exists. That doesn't affect people's general morale, their outlook on life. It doesn't affect any of those things. It just means that they can use drugs now.
Yeah,
and
it just alters the market.
Yeah, which
really.
I am totally in favor of people doing what they want. I still don't think it's a good thing for you to do drugs. Even
Probably
if
not.
it's none of my business, I don't think that's a good thing. Like that's not a positive thing, and it's probably not a good thing that I smoke weed or whatever, but I mean like using, hard drugs that are doing active physical damage to your body. Like this is not a good thing, so I don't still approve of that. So I don't I don't want you to be doing that.
I don't think you should be booting black tar heroin still.
And that's from a personal care point, not from like I want to moderate your behavior thing. It's that like this isn't good for our country that people are just doing that. That's not good. It isn't good that I know from my own experience. Like when I was 16, I was fucking taking pills, I was doing all kinds of shit. Like that isn't good, And these other ways that maybe we keep people out of prison, that's a good thing. To lock less people in the cage is definitely a good thing. But if we're not affecting the other things that are making people do drugs, then I don't really know what the fucking point is,
Yeah.
And maybe that sounds a little bit shitty because we're getting people out of cages. Like that's a good thing, So I would never dispute that, but that doesn't deal with what I see as the actual issue of people using drugs. Like, that's not a good thing. You know, there are very few people that are going to be able to use hard drugs on a recreational basis that doesn't fuck with their life. You know, some people can do that. There are some people who fucking do coke for 30 years and they're fine. It's fucking their body up for sure, but they're holding down a job, they're paying their bills, they're doing whatever. Like, there's the doctor or whoever the fuck that like does heroin, you know, like whoever that guy is, like and he's like, it's fine if you know, keep yourself. And sure, there are some people that are going to do that, but the vast majority of people are not that way. You know, the vast majority of people, if you smoke meth one time, you're going to be hooked on meth until something happens and you're not on it anymore. Or the same deal with heroin, fentanyl, all this shit, you know.
It's not like your group of friends is going to get together on a Friday night and be like, yo, we just got a little bit of meth. Let's just smoke a bunch of meth this weekend. It'll be great. Right. It'll be a great weekend. Nah, not really. That's not something I would advise people to do. And I don't think that's, but like party drugs, maybe like, you know, like MDMA,
Molly and shit like that. Yeah, for sure.
A lot of that kind of stuff. Weed.
And I don't have
even cocaine a little bit.
Like, there's a big argument for proponents of legalization and stuff that are like, well, then the market will take over and people will make like safer versions and stuff. And I don't have the faith that will like quickly become a thing. You know, that someone's going to be like, I'm going to fucking start a safe heroin company because I really want people to. Certainly someone will, but also the generalized view of heroin in 2023. People aren't going to like love that company, you know. We're not going to have a generally good view of a company that's making heroin for people to use, even if they're saying we're doing it with the intent so that people can use it and not die. Like, you're also making heroin that you're selling to people. Like, that's not good, you know.
It's a greater less evil.
So I certainly in the pure capitalist America, there will be a company that does that. But the idea that they will then have nationwide, you know, sales. That this is not, I don't think that's realistic and defeats the idea behind that, you know.
Well, let's think back to when they legalized weed in the state, right? It was, for a minute, it was still cheaper to get it from where you were getting it before.
Yes.
Until eventually it caught up, and then now it's fucking dirt cheap everywhere you go now. And they kind of like the legal market. It took a while, but they did price out the illegal market really quick.
And I think the winner there was that the damage that cannabis does to you is not physical, you know, for the most part. There are some people who are going to like fluctuate in weight and stuff like that, but the vast majority of people, like,
munchies are a bitch, dude.
Whatever damage it's doing to you is psychological, you know. So the argument of whether or not it's good for you is like getting more decided scientifically, but socially it's still very much a dispute, you know. There are going to be people who are like, this is the best thing that you could ever do, and there are some people who are going to say you could literally fucking die if you do it one time, you know, because or you could have a mental break, you could whatever. Like, those things are true to a certain extent. Some people do have a proclivity to that, and they smoke weed one time, fucking snap schizophrenia, and like, that is a thing that does happen sometimes. That's exceedingly rare. Yes. Exceedingly rare. You know, just like people who become so fucking addicted to cannabis that they can't conduct themselves. That does happen. It's exceedingly rare. You know?
And also, I mean, like, at the end of the day, depending on how you're intaking it, like if you're smoking joints or blunts or anything like that, you still have like the smoke damage to your lungs and shit like that. So that could be like
the damage it's doing to you is not present there. Whereas anybody who's using heroin for 10 years, you're going to have signs of using heroin, whether it is just the track marks on your arms or whatever. Like, it's even this doctor, you know, you use it, it's going to have negative effects on your body to use heroin any number of times. That's not going to be a good thing, and people are going to be able to see that. So that's, I think, the winner as far as cannabis is like, it's still in dispute, you know, but there's very little question whether or not heroin is bad for you.
You know, for sure.
At least as far as in mainstream society. You know, you ask 100 people, 100 or maybe 99, they're gonna be like, heroin's bad for you.
I would like to advocate for the reversion to adding cocaine to Coca-Cola, like the original status was. Let's go back to the original recipe and see how that works out for people. That'd be a whole nother. We'll cut out the high fructose corn syrup.
Just add
we'll put in real sugar, and we'll put a little bump in there, and then, bro, everybody, Coke would just they'd make billions overnight.
It was just trace amounts from the production, right? When they were
something to do with like,
it wasn't an additive. It was like, is it just as a byproduct of the process?
Yeah, it was part of like the original recipe.
Right, was the coca leaves?
Yeah, there was the coca leaves in there. So you got a little bit of that kind of cocaine, and then
maybe like doing a gummer or something.
Yeah, and then back like in the 20s and 30s and 40s. Like cocaine, you could get cocaine gum, and like it was like you get at a pharmacy and shit like that. It was, I don't know why the hell people would be taking so much cocaine back then, but they fucking did. And it was in tons of products.
Getting shit done, bro.
That's, maybe that's really what the problem is. That's why everybody's so lazy nowadays, because we're all fucking coked out of our mind like our fucking grandparents were back in the day.
You ever seen Harold and Kumar?
The first one.
Yeah, so, and I'm pretty sure that it's in that one. Eventually they wind up on a farm, right? Yeah, and the guy, he's
because they like launch their car into like a tree or a barn or something like that.
You seen Harold and Kumar?
No.
Oh, well, so
Harold and Kumar go to White Castle?
It's a fucking ridiculous movie. You don't
great film.
Need to see it.
Yeah.
Great film.
But they wind up on a farm, and this guy, they find out that the farmer smoked weed. He has like a whole case of weed, and they're like, I didn't have any idea that farmers smoked weed. And he's like, you ever try farming not high? It's boring as shit. And I'm sure it's the same fucking idea. Those people are like, yeah, you ever try and do it not on cocaine? Like, you ever try and lift 7 hay bales not on cocaine?
Yeah.
Can't do it. You know what you can do? Chew a couple of pieces of cocaine gum. Good to go.
Let's go.
Slinging them bales all day.
Yeah, dude. I'm a fucking 8-year-old down in the coal mines, and at lunch I got to have my little Coca-Cola, get my buzz up, and get through the rest of this 18-hour day.
You've been up since 2. You got to get after it. Yeah. So it's
Back to the mines.
I generally think it's an interesting concept. Obviously, I'm always in favor of less government involvement in people's lives, but
it would be a big rough patch, I think, for a while. But
I'm unconvinced by the ways it doesn't address doing drugs. Like, that is a problem, and just making it a way where we don't put people in jail is good, but it doesn't address.
It doesn't
what
stop.
I think is the issue of people doing drugs.
Yeah.
Like, that's
you look at San Francisco and any major city, Seattle. I mean, the fucking fentanyl zombies walking around all day.
Yes.
They're not getting locked up. I mean, we have tons of like the safe injection sites and stuff like that, but like at the end of the day, these people are not getting locked up and thrown away forever. They're just on the streets being fucking zombies, and that's not.
And that's
that's not a good thing either.
The other part, like I was once in favor of mass legalization of all drugs, because my mindset was very much like a not in my backyard thing. Like, I don't care what you're doing as long as you're not like fucking with my family. But the idea that someone can do fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamines, X drug for like a number of years and not begin to impact other people's lives, it's not. I don't think that's very realistic.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're separate, your family's like, whatever, do you? Or we're just not going to do our own thing. Like, when you're walking the streets, when you're doing shit, you're fucking with other people's lives. You're affecting other people's lives, which is not a good thing.
Oh yeah.
Which immediately counteracts that. The liberty of why we did it in the first place, of like, we want to let people do what they want, but if you're doing what you want and immediately fucking with other people's lives, this isn't okay, and this was maybe a bad choice that we made to begin with. Does that make sense?
No, it does, because it actually brings me to like I think Zeke made a good point about the fentanyl. Yeah, I was gonna bring up that too, because that's the reason why I wouldn't really lobby for it too, because like something that dangerous,
right?
You can't really get a proper hand on that.
And there's already new drugs all the time. Like, I know super meth or whatever that we're hearing about now, just over the last 2 weeks. That's apparently a thing now.
That's a thing now.
Yes, and there's and just
it's got extra gasoline in it.
And as this way, in this particular market, I guess, creates itself when people do survive being on heroin for X number of years, and then it doesn't do any good anymore. So they start to mix other shit in.
Of course, yeah.
And so that's how you get some of these other drugs and stuff. And that's another concern that I would have, is if it's legal, that's going to happen more. It's going to happen quicker.
It's going to happen rapidly.
People are going to be fucking around
every 3 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about these, now we're saying new drugs that are more and more potent and more lethal, fentanyl, mega meth, whatever the fuck, right? That's going to be happening every other week if we're saying that it's whatever, do whatever you want.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even in the legal weed industry, that's the way it was. I mean, the shit that, what was they call it? The Mexican dirty weed that you'd get in the 60s. It was real chill compared to the stuff that you just go buy at the shop now. Even like the low test stuff you buy at the shop, and that shit's like I talked to one of my old mentors a couple weeks ago, and he's, he was like prime of his age during like the 60s and 70s, and he was, him and his boys would go down to fucking Mexico all the time and just load up with weed and bring it across the border and all that shit. And he sees this stuff nowadays, and it's got like 70 to like 90 THC, and he's like, that would put me under the table, man.
Yeah.
Like, he's got he would like get a hold of a bunch of weed, usually from a friend who would grow it themselves, And then he just got into the point where he'd just put it into like one of these finite bags, the super fine mesh bag with some dry ice, and just make shake out of it. And then he'd just take a little dab of that whenever he wanted to smoke at the end of the night, and just
like the key from it.
Yeah, just like hit a little keef like that. And he said like that alone is like, dude, we never had anything like that back in the day. Once it became legal, people started, like, scientists got involved and really fucking brought all this high test shit up like this, and
proper
now it's
labs,
hardcore even compared to that. So I can only imagine as synthetic drugs continue to get pushed out and ramped up, it would only get worse and worse. But I think I don't know how you solve that problem, but the only true way to solve it would have some kind of mass societal understanding that this shit's terrible for you and you shouldn't be doing it.
And to that end, I
just
think
because you have the freedom to do it, you probably shouldn't.
And to that end, I think the decriminalization thing is a good thing, because there's a general exposure there that, like, a lot of the reason people get into that type of stuff, like you said, is ignorance. Like, you don't have a full understanding of what's going to happen. You know, if even at 16, I knew that, like, mixing pills was bad, but and like dangerous, but you don't fully understand precisely how dangerous this thing is, or like how lucky you are to fucking survive every time you do it. You know, and so it's an ignorance thing, you know, that you don't know, and it's not because I didn't know people doing pills and shit, it's because I didn't know people who had died from pills, you know. So to that end, I think it's good, not that more people are dying, but that, like, it's more prevalent, about that more because people are talking about it, and you just see it more frequently. So, like, to that end, it's good, but also generalized exposure to people fucked up on drugs is not a good thing, you know. So
walk around any major city for a little while.
It can be very dangerous.
You want to fuck around with that?
It's
the thing I don't get to is the
Kevin.
Shout out.
He said, you stop people from using by being honest. We lie to kids and say drugs are bad, but they aren't. Drugs are so good, you will give away everything in your life for the drug. Friends, family, jobs, home, 100%.
Yeah.
Welcome to the south of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you